Jai Hind everyone. The topic which I am going to discuss is basically introduction to computer, and this is the basic topic which is covered under unit 1 of the subject with the code KCA 101. So basically what is a computer? And if we say in a simple terms, then it is a electronic device. So what kind of electronic device it is? Basically it accepts the data, that is the input which the user is giving, and it performs certain calculations or mathematical kind of thing or logical operations at a very high speed and generating some result, and this result is the output which is being given to the user. So what we have learned from the previous definition, that it is an electronic device. It converts data into information. What is data? It is a raw fact. And what is the information? That is, once you are converting this raw fact into some meaningful data, then this is known as information. Nowadays, we are having the digital computers, that is basically a combination of 2-digit 0 and 1. Before digital systems, we were having analog system, and nowadays we are moving towards the era of the quantum system, where instead of the digital digit system, we are working on the qubits. So older, they were the analog system. Here a range of values, it is your data. So if you look at the figure, analog, this is the early analog computer, which is basically created by Vannevar Bush in the late 1920s and was called a differential analyzer. It used electronic motors, gears and other moving parts to solve the equations. This is another example, that is a vernier calipers, which you basically use for the calculations. This is another example of the analog computer. So what is data and what is information? So computer, it accepts the data, processes it and produces the information. So here we are having data. This data is nothing, it is your raw facts. You are doing some kind of processing on this data, and once this processing got complete, it is converted into meaningful data, having some meaning. And this is your information. So data refers to raw facts, and information, it is your processed data. For example, here it is the date of birth of a student, then it is a data. It is a raw. However, when we process that data, that is, for example, if I want to compute what is the current age of the student, then this implies I am doing certain kind of processing over it. So here it comes out, for example, it comes out to be 18 years, then the outcome is information. Now we are moving towards what the computer system comprised of. So once, if you look at the figure, here we are having a user, that is you. Here we are having a system. This system, it comprises of hardware and software. The user is providing the data, and this data is given to the system through certain hardware. We are having software running on the system, and the software is generating the output and producing that output to the user through output devices. So these are your hardware devices. So basically computer systems, it comprises of 4 parts. One is hardware, software, data and user. Hardware, it is a mechanical device in the computer, anything that can be touched. That is your, if you say we are having various chips on the motherboard, then we are having CPU, we are having RAM, you can touch it, we are having hard disk, we are having pen drives and so on. So the printers, so these are the hardware components of your system. Software, basically it is something which you cannot touch, but then it is you could say it is an entity. So what it comprises of? It comprises of a number of instructions which you have written in this. And why we need the software? Because we are aware that hardware is your bare machine. So bare machine, it does nothing on its own. If you want it to perform certain tasks, then you need certain set of instructions, that is your code or system calls, through which you will give the command to this bare machine, and this bare machine will do the work on your or processing on your behalf. So basically software, it tell the computer what to do, and you call it as a program, software program, one and the same thing. Thousands of programs exist. For example, common example, your Word doc files, then the applications, for example, your web browser, then your music players, and so on. So these are the n number of programs which you run daily so that you can perform certain action on your system. Data, as we have already seen, it is a piece of information, and the computer organize and present the data in the form of the meaningful information to you. Users, basically people operating the computer, and it is the most important part because he is the one who tell the computer what to do. Because from environment to environment, the working or the processing of an application may vary. So user basically tell the system what kind of work need to be done. Now come to the next part, that is information processing cycle. So the steps which is basically followed to process a data. First, you will provide certain input. Then in the second step, you will do the processing. In the third part, we are having generating the output, or the fourth part, that is a storage, if we want to store the information on the hard disk or certain other tertiary medium. So user basically providing this input. This is provided to the system. Here the processing being done. Output, either it is displayed on the system, or you may take the printout of your output, or even you can store the output on secondary or tertiary devices. Now come on the next part, that is the computer hardware. So computers, they use some basic hardware, and these basic hardware, they have been categorized into 4 types. We are having input output devices, then we are having the memory part, processor part, and the storage part. So the first one is your processing devices. Basically, they are also known as the brain of the computer, because all the processing, whether mathematical or the logical operations which you are performing on your system, all need to be done by this processing device, that is your CPU. It carries out the instructions from the program, carries out, that is basically it execute. It manipulates the data. No doubt you are giving input and you are getting output. So this middle part, that is a processing part, it is done by these devices. Most computers have several processors. It depends. For example, nowadays, most of your laptops, when you go to purchase them in the market, then the thing you need, ask from the vendor that whether it is a dual core or it is a quadruple core, and so on. So these are the different cores which we are having on the same chip. So the computer, they may have the several processors. It is also known by the name central processing unit. We are having secondary processors also available. Basically they are being used in the fault tolerant systems. Processors made of silicon and copper, that is basically your chips. Memory devices, they store the data or the programs. Here we are having 2 types. One is RAM and another one is your ROM. When we say RAM, it is a volatile, it stores current data and programs. More RAM result in a faster system. ROM, it is a permanent storage of programs, and basically it holds the computer boot directions and other functionality which we need when we initialize the system. That is, when you boot up your system, then the very first instruction which got executed, it is written in the read-only memory. Input and output devices, it allows the user to interact. That is how the user will interact with the system. It is basically through the input and output devices. When we say input devices, then it accepts the data. For example, keyboard, mouse, etc., camera, your webcam and all these, it comes under the category of input devices. Output devices, they are the devices which deliver the data, or which show the data, or which store the data for you. Then they may be example of monitors, printers, speakers, and so on. Some devices which fall under the category of both, for example, your touch screens, they can be used both for your input as well as for output. Next important component is your storage device. It holds the data and programs permanently. It is different from RAM. RAM, basically, when we say, it is a volatile memory, whereas in the case of the hard drive, it is a non-volatile. That is, what you store in the hard drive, it got permanently stored. Then another thing, your CPU, it interacts with RAM directly, whereas hard disk interaction is not there. CPU never interact with your hard drives. They only interact with the RAM. Magnetic storage, for example, the storage devices, they may be of magnetic type, or they may be of optical type. In the magnetic type, we are having the example of floppies and hard drives, whereas in the case of the optical type, we are having CDs and DVDs. So what is a software? Next important thing, what is a software? As we have already seen, it is a, you could say, a set of instructions written in a program which tells the system what to do. And we are having two categories of softwares. One is system software and another one is your application software. System software, basically they are those softwares which deal with the system, or you could say which interact with your hardware directly, whereas the application software, they are your general purpose softwares which are basically designed to satisfy the need of user requirement. For example, operating system, since it is interacting with your hardware directly, it is an example of system software. Then there is another system utilities. These are those programs which you need to be run for the efficient running of the computer. For example, they can be your antivirus, they can be your compilers, they can be your task managers, and so on. Whereas in the case of the application software, since they are designed for some user specific task, so they depend upon the nature of the task they are going to perform. For example, it could be your student information system, it could be your railway reservation system, it could be your employee management system, hotel reservation system. These are the your Word doc files, your Word Office, basically all the tools which comes under your Office, they comes under the category of application software. So system software, it is the most important software because ultimately it is dealing with the hardware directly. Operating system, it is one of the, you could say, system software, and it is a very important system software. If you are not having installed on your OS on your system, then you can't run other system softwares and other application softwares on your system. So it is a mandate system software which need to be run on the bare machine, because ultimately it is the, you could say, system software which is sitting between users. Then we are having OS, then we are having hardware. So user is giving instruction to the OS is giving instruction to the hardware. That is, OS is working on behalf of the users. we are having examples of network operating system, Windows, your Android, and so on. There are and numerous of operating system nowadays. Utilities, they again come under the category of system software. So, for example, antivirus, etc. Application software, we have seen that it accomplishes a specific task. Most common type of software, for example, your MS Word, which I already covered, covers most common uses of computers. Computer data, fact with no meaning on its own, we have already seen, is stored using the binary number system if we talk about the digital computers. Data can be organized into files. Computer users' role depends on ability, basically for setting up the system or for installing the software, for maintaining the system. Nowadays, we are having userless computers also. That is, they are the automated system. Once they start running, then they don't require the user interaction. They can run the commands on their own. Applications. So the applications domain of a computer depends totally on human creativity and imagination. It covers a huge area of applications, including we need the computers basically for education industry, in various industries where we require the management of resources. Then the government, medicine sector, scientific research, and various other user applications. Millions of complex calculations can be done within a fraction of time. Difficult decisions can be made nowadays with the help of AI-based application, and for this, the cost as compared to the human cost is very less. Next important thing is the characteristics of computer. So the very first and important characteristics of computer is speed. So the computer, it processes the data and at an extremely fast rate. Millions of instructions per second in few seconds. A computer can perform a huge task that a normal human being may take days or even years to complete. The speed of a computer is calculated in megahertz. Next important characteristic is accuracy. Besides efficiency, computers are accurate as well. The level of accuracy depends on the instructions and the type of machine being used. It is diligence. Diligence means that computer being a machine, it doesn't suffer the traits of laziness and tiredness and lack of concentration. If we ask a human to work for continuous 24 hours, then for a human being, it is an impossible task, because he got tired easily and he need to take rest. But in the case of the computer, if you give some task to be performed by a system for 24 hours, then it will do without getting tired. So this is the diligence quality of the computer system. Automation. Computer performs a task without any user intervention. That is, once you submitted some process, the computer will do this for you. Reliability. Basically, the reliability here, it is the measure of performance of a computer, which measured against some predetermined standard for operation without any failure. That is, if we ask that we need to perform a certain task, then and if we compare the computer and a human being, then the computer, it is more reliable, not in terms of speed, but also the performance. In terms of performance also, the computer is very much, you could say, better than the human being. Storage capability. The main memory of the computer is relatively small and it can hold only a certain amount of information. Therefore, we need to store the data on secondary devices and tertiary devices. Nowadays, we are having a huge capacity of secondary storage and tertiary devices. So, the storage capability is there. But if we say without the computer system, then how we are going to store the information, then we have to write the millions of things on a computer or in a physical file, whereas in the case of the system, we can store all these things in a relatively small space. Versatility, it can perform multiple tasks simultaneously with great ease. For example, at one moment it can draft a letter, it can you can listen a music, you can download something in the background. But if you ask a human being that you need to complete the task simultaneously, multiple tasks simultaneously, then for him or her it is a very difficult task. First he will complete a first task, then he will go for the another one. But for system, it is like concurrent execution of all the programs. Resource sharing, it may be it made the sharing of costly resources very easy and in a very costly, you could say, cost saving manner. No, but the another important character, that is, it is having no intelligence of its own. That is, all the instructions which a user provided to do, it will work on that on the behalf of the user only. So they do not have the decision making abilities unless and until they are some AI based application. Economical, computers are considered as short term investment for achieving long term gains. They save both time, money and energy. Classification of computers. So if we classify the computer, then we are having a category: supercomputers, mainframes, mini, micro. Mainframe, they are further divided into dumb terminals and the intelligent terminals. Dumb terminals, that is, they are not having any processing unit with them, whereas in the case of the intelligent terminals, they are having certain you could say processing power available with them. Microcomputers, they are further categorized into desktop, laptops, handheld devices, workstations and network systems. The category on this level is according to the how large the resources, how big the resources being associated with the system. In the case of the supercomputers, we are having large number of hard drives and a very high processing power associated with them. As we move towards the mainframe, then this computation power got reduced up to here. Next and another important topic is basic organization of the computers. So this figure is very important. This is the block diagram of computer also. So we are having input and output. Here we are having the storage basically. So data and instructions, they are given to the input devices. The storage, that is basically your RAM, etc. They your instructions reaches here, and here we are having the output. Here we are having the CPU. CPU comprises of control unit as well as ALU, that is your arithmetic and logical unit. Your solid lines, they show the flow of data, whereas your dotted line, it shows the control which is being exerted by the control unit, because we need to maintain and we need to catch all the errors being generated on these hardware devices. So the control unit is basically involved in the maintenance and the effective functioning of all these resources. So CPU, it is only interacting with the storage, that is your RAM here, and here we are having the input and output. Input and output, they are only interacting with your storage devices. So input, it is the process of entering the data and instructions into the system, and basically we are having the input devices. Storage, the process of saving data and instructions permanently in the computer so that they can be used for processing. A computer has two type of storage areas. One is primary and another one is your secondary. Primary is the main memory. It is stored the area that is directly accessible by the, or you could say the CPU is directly involved interacting with it at a very high speed. Whereas in the case of the secondary storage, which is also known by secondary auxiliary memory, we are having the limited, the CPU is not interacting with it, and the speed of your secondary storage device is also low as compared to your primary storage devices. Basically, they are being used for permanent storage of your files and documents. Processing, the process of performing operations on the data as per the instructions is specified by the user. This is the definition for the processing. Output, basically they are the devices where the output for the user is being generated. Control unit, it is acting as the nervous system of a computer, and it manages and control the other computer components. These are the few applications of the computers which we have already seen. Word processing, traffic control, retail business, desktop publishing, and so on. This is all about the basic introduction of the computer. Thank you and Jai.